Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. And I want to begin by expressing my gratitude and thanks to the invitation to come here for the Institute, specifically Misbah Rahman. You've done a wonderful job organizing this, and I appreciate all of the hard work and effort that everyone, all the staff, put into this to organize this conference to celebrate what I think hopefully will be a milestone achievement in the field of Islamic studies. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is some of the work that I've been recently doing in the field of computational hadith studies with several people, not by myself, because these projects are so complex, it really requires expertise from different domains. So quick overview of what hadith are for this audience. Hopefully that won't have to take very long because I think we've been hearing about hadith all weekend, so we should all be experts in hadith by now. A little bit of an overview of what are the existing scholarly approaches to understanding this literature. I'm going to talk a little bit about the corpus that I relied on, the importance of digitization, and some conclusions and results of what computational and statistical analysis of hadith can generate. And then I'm going to introduce a new concept, which we've been working on for the past few years, which is to understand hadith transmission as a type of social network. What does that mean, and what kinds of insights can it give us? You've been hearing a lot about machine learning and tools. I won't really talk too much about that. And then hopefully sketch, well, what are some future work that we, for the field that this type of analysis enables. So hadiths and isnads. Just to give an overview, when we talk about hadiths, we're talking about isnads as well. And here is an example. The isnad part is this list of names that documents the transmission of this actual information. So anytime you go into most hadith works, you're going to have this list of names, and you're going to have the actual text that's distributed to the Prophet or whatever early authority, companion, successor, whatever. This one is the 5 pillars, famous 5 pillars hadith. You see the names recorded in this collection. So that's the very basic idea of what a hadith is, right? That is one type of literature. Another type of literature is the biographies of these individual names. Who are they? So for instance, if you go to one biographical entry for this guy, Israel and Ishaq ibn Mansur, what types of information are you going to find? You're going to find he was Kufan, you're going to find he was born in this state, he died in this state, apparently he visited Baghdad, right? So very short notice, identifying this person, right? Ishaq ibn Mansur, same thing, Kufan, some information about his name, died in the year 204. So for our particular purposes, what I want you to remember is there's temporal information and there's geographical information. Kufa, Baghdad, born, died in the year 204, Kufan, right? So, and there are literally tens of thousands of these biographical notices that record temporal and geographical information for many of these names that populate the isnads of hadiths, right? Just keep that in mind. So when we're talking about hadith studies, there's some kind of analysis of these isnads and these hadiths, right? And biographical information found in biographical dictionaries. Some kind of combination of those two is what scholarship in hadith studies relies on. I would say that there are two types of analysis in hadith studies. One type of analysis is what I call local analysis. Local analysis is you examine a collection of hadith, a handful of hadith, or maybe a single hadith, and you come to some kinds of conclusions about when did that idea circulate, when did it circulate, is it authentic, is it not authentic, and you can kind of divide local analysis into some type of text criticism, right? Compare text to better transmitted hadiths, which is what the scholars of Hadith did compare text to establish legal and theological ideas, compare text to political motivation, and we give some kind of, right? Here, you're not necessarily looking at isnads, you're looking at the content of the text, right? Content of the hadith. There's isnad criticisms, right? You compile judgments on these individual transmitters, these names that populate the isnads. Oftentimes, not only do we have information about when and where they lived and who they were, but also, okay, this person is a precise narrator, trustworthy narrator, weak narrator, known fabricator. There are these evaluated judgments that are also included in these biographical dictionaries. And isnad criticism, often, the traditional Muslim scholars, what they did is compile these judgments and then add up the judgments into some kind of judgment on the isnads as a whole. This is a good hadith, this is a bad hadith, this is an okay hadith, right? And then there's isnad and text together, popularized by Harold Motsky. And Western scholarship also looks at isnad criticism in different ways, right? The important point is local analysis. You gather together a few texts together, you look at isnad and matan together, come to some conclusions. The other type of hadith studies analysis that combines information in biographical dictionaries with isnads is what I call global analysis. Here is oftentimes you'll see these diagrams when you read articles on hadiths. So that's also a part of local analysis. All right, so I'm sure everyone here is familiar with these diagrams, or maybe a lot of them are. A lot of you are. Yes, okay. All right, so let's go on. Global analysis. What do I mean by global analysis? Global analysis collects a lot of the information found in the biographical dictionaries, right? The anecdotes that are found in them, and tries to say something about the entire nature of transmission of hadith as found in these anecdotes that populate these biographical dictionaries, right? For instance, how many hadith transmitters in Baghdad are there in the year 250? You're not looking at hadiths and isnads, you're just looking at biographical dictionaries, tabulating who belongs in Baghdad, where did they die and live, and then you say, oh, okay, we have a list of this number of people transmitted hadith in Baghdad, and Basra, and Kufa, Medina, whatever, right? And you try to tell some kind of story about the nature of hadith transmission over time. So, two different types of studies. This is global analysis, relies on biographical information. The other is so a lot of information, but only one type of source. The other, local analysis, close, intricate reading of hadith, right? Combines information from isnads and biographical dictionaries to say something about a particular set of hadiths, right? Two different types of doing scholarship in hadith studies. So what we're trying to do, what we want to do, is there a way to combine the information in the isnads, right, which documents some kind of claim to transmission of information from one person to the next with the information that's found in the biographical dictionaries that identify who these people were, when and where they lived. Is there a way to combine all of this and then tell a global story about the nature of hadith transmission over a long period of time? That's kind of like what one of our projects did, right? But in order to do that, because there are hundreds of thousands of hadiths, right? Hundreds of thousands of isnads. There are tens of thousands of unique names identified in the isnads. We're talking about a very, very large literature and then there's the biographical information found in tens of volumes of biographical dictionaries of these tens of 50,000 or so names that are found in these isnads. So it would take, using manual methods, it would take a team of researchers a long time to combine these two data sets together, right? This is the reason why we got lucky, and some people started digitizing hadith in one particular, and that enables a type of computational analysis that takes both of these informations, puts it together, and it can tell a narrative about the nature of Hadith transmission over a long period of time that combines both data sets simultaneously. That's what I'm going to talk about. So the data set that we relied on is this software called Jawami al-Kalim, put out by the Wizarat al-Awqaf in Qatar, right? They put together this massive Sunni Hadith database, right? 638,000 isnads and 447,000 hadiths drawn from 1,348 different collections, right? When you look at all of the names cited in these 600,000 isnads, there's 5 million names. 5 million names that reduce to about 50,000 unique people, right? Because there are different ways that different people might cite names, right? I'm Miraj Sayed, I'm Professor Sayed, I'm Baba at home, I'm, an idiot, some people, right? Many different names, same person, many different names, right? Don't ask me who calls me an idiot. You do know, that's true. And the transmitters are wide-ranging 900 years, from the year 600 all the way to the year 1467, right? So this was digitized, but not only was it digitized, what they did that is quite valuable and labor-intensive, and they need to be given credit for what they did, is they went through and they tagged all of these names with unique IDs, right? So those variations of names, Mera Professor Sayed, Miraj Sayed, Baba Idiot, right, is reduced to a unique ID, let's say 786. I'll give myself the 786 unique ID, right? So these names reduced to IDs, and then the IDs correspond to basic biographical information drawn from the biographical dictionaries of if the information was available, birth year, death year, cities in which they stayed, there are about 20 other different types of fields of information, right? This is monumental. This part is monumental, reducing the names and identifying and reducing them to unique IDs. That's monumental. And then the other part that's monumental is going and looking at many different volumes and sources of biographical information and putting it into column tabular form, right? So what we do could not have been done unless these people did this job. So what do we do? What we do is we take all of that information and put it together, right? So these 400,000 hadith, these 49,000 unique transmitters, when you put all of those names in those isnads together, it reduces to about 320,000 unique relationships. So these 50,000 people reduced to 320,000 unique relationships. Okay, so that's kind of like what we added to their idea. And then of these 50,000, about 10,000 of them have some kind of city and time information, right? 40,000 we don't know where they lived, and where they died. We don't know that, but for 10,000 of them, we do know. We have some kind of information for both the city in which they lived and at least when they died. When you take that, you can create a hadith social network that is composed of about 120,000 unique transmitter relationships, right? And that's what we did. We created a social network drawn from the isnads that has information on where these transmitters lived and when they lived, right? So then, and what we did is we went from these names to creating these relationships, which in another field is called an edge. What I'm calling a transmitter relationship is also called an edge. And then what you do is you can put all of these edges from all of these 600,000 isnads together and create a huge social network that is all integrated into some kind of form that then allows you to do some kind of statistical and mathematical and computational types of analysis. right? It's called a graph in mathematics. And then what do we do, okay? So here's the thing. How do you go from, okay, I got 5 minutes, right? How do you go from information that is attributed to transmitters, to individuals, this person Ishaq, this person Israel, lived in these cities in this time period, say, right? That is information that's associated with individuals. How do you take that information and transform it and so that you can attribute it to the relationship between Israel and Ishaq? So we developed an algorithm that took that information from nodes, narrators, individuals, and attributed it to these 120,000 relationships. And when we did that, we were able to put all of those relationships, or what we call instances of hadith transmission, into different cities and into different years. And then what we were able to do is add up all of those instances of transmission, those relationships in the different cities in the different years, so that we can calculate the total volume of transmission activity in any given year in any given city. Right? So that's what we did. Now, when you put all of it together and you visualize it in a line graph, you get something that is completely messy and unintelligible that looks like this. Each of the lines is a different color and represents a different city. Okay? This right here is time. So starting with the year 632 to the year 1009, this is the number of hadiths in which these instances of transmission took place. Right? There are 593 unique cities. There are 593 unique lines, right? And you can kind of see there's rise and fall of different cities in different time periods over 400 years, right? Now, if we look at the topmost cities in different time periods, the 4 topmost cities, this is what we get. Medina, super intense activity, dies out, right? Starting year 200, dies out. Kufa, picks up steam, 120 to 160, dies out by 280. Basra and Kufa are kind of simultaneous, but Basra is intense after Kufa starts dying out, and then it dies out. Baghdad starts in the year 140. Makes sense. Baghdad was founded in the year 145, and it has a very strong. These are the topmost cities in this time period, right? So you have a narrative of the highest level of transmission activity in these 400 years. Goes something like Medina in phase 1, Kufa and Basra both in phase 2, but Kufa was a little bit earlier than Basra, and then Baghdad in the final phase. Right? So does this correlate with what we know outside what is going on politically, economically, and demographically in these different cities, right? And the argument that we make is, in fact, it does. It correlates very well with the rise and fall of these cities in political, economic, and demographic importance, right? Medina is important because after the expansion and the conquest, Medina is the seat of scholarship and learning for prominent companions. So it makes sense that it would be the best, most prominent city in the early period. Then Kufa and Basra surpass Medina in the late Umayyad, early Abbasid period. They become much more important than Medina. Kufa is the capital city early when the Abbasid Empire first gets established. And then Basra becomes super important. When Baghdad is founded, Basra becomes important, and Kufa declines in generally speaking, in political and economic importance. Why? Because all of the traffic from central Iraq is now located in Baghdad, which is the seat of the capital. Basra actually gains in prosperity because of the founding of Baghdad, because it is near the Persian/Arabian Gulf. and there's trade between Basra and Baghdad, right? And then with the political disorder of the Qaramita, Basra declines, Baghdad remains strong. So what does that mean? We say, listen, man, the correlation of the rise and fall of Hadith transmission activity with other economic and political factors proves that the whole-scale skepticism of all of the isnads, or many parts of it, is unjustified. Wholesale rejection that this is a fabrication of names, that these names make no sense. It would be highly illogical to assume that a fabrication of names at that level would correspond so well with what we know external to Hadith transmission about the importance of different cities and the rise and fall in history. So here we've taken a computational approach, right, and answered a question that was live for an existing audience. Now, I don't have time to get into, well, not only does a computational approach enable us to answer questions that are bugging us right now, but it actually enables us to ask entirely new questions altogether. But I have run out of time. I have 1 minute?
1 minute, yes.
All right. So let me go, I don't know how, let me just go through this. So I've kind of talked about the idea of the Hadith transmission as a graph, as a huge social network. You take all of these transmitter relationships found in the isnad, you create this massive social network that consists of 320,000 transmitter relationships that lasted in time for almost a millennium, right? All right, what can you do with that? Well, one thing you can do is you can use it to fill in empty information, right? We only have death dates for 14,000 people. But once you create a graph, right, the relationships have some kind of hierarchy, right? Teachers are older than students, so where teachers occur is some kind of a substitute or replacement for temporal information. Is there a way to calculate and infer time from the place of the narrators in the social network? That's what we had this idea. Can we generate information? And I'm happy to say, yes, we can, and our results were very good. So what we basically did was we took this algorithm that was used to measure hierarchy in ecological networks, and we said, let's apply that to our Hadith graph, our social network, and we were able to generate time. These numbers represent time. You can see this is early transmitters, this is late transmitters. The early transmitters have a lower number than the later transmitters, right? It makes sense. And then when we plotted what's called the Mackay trophic level, the numbers assigned to the nodes by calculating their position in the graph on the x-axis with the death date for the 14,000 people for whom we have a death date, what we see is a nice line that correlates the number that was generated by the computation on the graph or the network with the death date, showing that the numbers are good. So now we have an ability to place the rest of the 40,000 people for whom we don't have death dates because the biographers never recorded them into some kind of temporal framework. So this is one application. I have a few other applications as well. This project was done by Shoaib. I need to mention that, Shoaib Chaudhry, and you can kind of see it. We talked at length of this in this particular article. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to your questions.